Hello, welcome back to another video. um, so today I thought I would talk about my favorite hobby, dumpster diving. And yes, I did call it a hobby. I am privileged enough to have that as a hobby. For some people, I recognize that that might be more of like a last resort or a means of existence. So I wanted to start off by kind of discussing what I'm referring to when I say dumpster diving, because I don't specifically mean dumpsters, right? So I'm talking about the act of removing items from trash receptacles, right? Which is a fancy way of saying dumpster diving. But this is literally anything, right? So it can be digging through a trash can out behind a movie theater. It can be getting into a full-size dumpster behind a grocery store. Like, it's all the same thing, more or less, right? But for sake of clarity, I'm going to be referring to it as dumpster diving or even just diving during this video. If I'm talking about dumpster diving, that's what I mean. So when I was just a little fetus, I went to martial arts classes, and I know that you're like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? I have crazy ADHD, and when I would go to these classes, I would like wander away from them, like the horrible little child I was, and next door to the place where I was receiving these lessons was a sort of car cleaning station, I guess, right? So they had like car washes, vacuums, air, and then like these giant blue canisters. So like when people would clean out their cars, right, they would just empty all the stuff into the canisters. And I don't know what like compelled me to do it, but one day I was like screwing around and I went over to these canisters and I like looked inside and I was like, dude, there's like cool shit in here, right? I mean, I was like 4, so I didn't say that. Well, I wasn't 4. I was a kid, okay? So I was a kid. And I was like, dang. So I got into these things and they were like taller than I was. And I would like lean over the edge and like grab stuff. And I remember I would find like CDs, jewelry, like a lot of kids' toys, like McDonald's toys, right? Well, we didn't really go to like McDonald's that often growing up. Or at least not for the toys, because like the kids' meal isn't really that good of a deal. But I would always find like McDonald's kids toys in there. And I remember my favorite ever was I found this like little
Purple.
blue like Grimace Beanie Baby plush. And I loved him. He was awesome. Shout outs that Grimace plushie. So yeah, I started dumpster diving when I was like a little kid. I mean, not on purpose. I wasn't like doing it with any sort of conviction or like anything important, but that's where it started, and I didn't really think it was weird, right? And I've been doing it for so long that I kind of forget that a lot of people do think it's weird to dig through garbage. And if you think it's weird, I understand, I get it, but it's not. And although I don't expect you to go dumpster dive after watching this, I do want you to reevaluate your stance on dumpster diving for multiple reasons. Now, before I start talking about how awesome dumpster diving is, I need to talk about not necessarily the opposite of that, but I need to sow some seeds of caution, and I need to generally kind of cover my bases, right? Dumpster diving is an inherently unsafe activity. And I'm sure that, again, that's something that has crossed your mind, but it comes with a lot of risks. Now you're probably sitting there like, duh, that's a trash can, dog. Like, that's disgusting. Right. But there's a lot more than trash in trash cans, right? Like, I need you to understand that, yeah, there's trash in there, but there's a lot more than trash in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk through a short list of kind of like my precautionary, like sort of little like, you know, things you should be aware of before you even kind of hazard a risk of dumpster diving. And then you can kind of be an adult and weigh those options. And if you're a kid, stay out of dumpsters. I didn't tell you to do this. And stay in school. So, one, the overall gross factor of digging through a dumpster. Now, this is very obvious to most people. This is usually what stops people from digging through a dumpster, you know, dumpster diving. It is garbage, right? It's trash. I mean, there could be anything in there. There could be diapers. There could be somebody's 3-week-old dip spit. You know, I'm from the Midwest, so we get a lot of that around here. Needles, like, I mean, there really could be like anything gross, you know what I mean? Like, aside from the fact that it's garbage, right? So it's just like gross, like, you know, like garbage, like trash, you know. I've I don't know how many more words I can say for that, but like, yeah. It's not a negligible factor, and it's not negotiable either. You are gonna run into some like nasty stuff. If you're not ready for garbage, don't get in the garbage. 2, I call this the surprise factor. They're not good surprises, but they're surprises, right? It's kind of like when you open a gift, but if you open that gift and there's like cow turds in it, that's the surprise. Yay. So some of those surprises, sharp things. I mentioned earlier needles. I mean, like, if somebody's like, oh man, my scissors suck, and they just throw them away. Like, I mean, sharp things. Like, literally, that's all I have to say. Like, cans. Like, think about how many things in your daily, day-to-day life that you come into contact with that are sharp. Now think about throwing those in a trash can and not knowing they're in there, and then like sticking your arm in there. And then also think about things that break, right? So even things that aren't necessarily sharp, normally when they get thrown into a trash can, they will break and become sharp. So things that weren't necessarily weapons become weapons when thrown into a dumpster. Surprise number 2, human things. So what I mean by that is tissues, spit, gum, diapers. If it comes out of you and you throw it in a trash, you know what? If it comes out of you, it probably ends up in a trash can like 50% of the time. Puke, pee, piss cups. I've seen piss cups in trash cans. If you're not ready to handle a piss cup, might not be for you. Bugs / animals. It's not often you're going to run into animals, and to be honest with you, if you're diving and you come into contact with like an opossum or I don't know, like anything else, probably just don't keep, you know, don't like get out of there, because you really shouldn't be playing around wild animals. Unfortunately, like that's their space too, you know. So I don't know, don't interact with raccoons. But also dead animals too, because unfortunately people will clean up dead animals by just tossing them into trash cans and dumpsters, which, I mean, it is what it is, but like, it's something you could run into. It's kind of a weird thing to point out, but I wouldn't be saying it if I hadn't seen it. This last one, I feel like it doesn't need to be mentioned, but it's something that you will encounter by far the most, and that is liquids. Everything, to some extent, has like moisture in it, right? So if you think about how many things are wet or liquid throughout the day or turn into liquid, like that will melt. So like people will throw cups of ice in trash cans. That melts into water. People will throw away their like leftover coffee. All of that leaks down into bags, and then oftentimes those bags do get ripped when they're tossed into the dumpster. So there's like a 99% chance that the bottom like 2 inches of a dumpster is just dumpster juice. I do not recommend interacting with this juice, and I really don't recommend trying to drink it. No matter how awesome and delicious it looks. So yeah, dumpster juice, that's another thing. So to kind of wrap that surprises section up, I'll just say that you can never be too prepared, so always be cautious when, getting into that kind of stuff. You really can never guess or assume what's going to be in a waste receptacle, right? So just because it's behind a Dunkin' Donuts doesn't mean the only thing that's going to be in there is donuts. Think about how many things those people have to handle just to get you your donut. Cardboard boxes, paper, kitchen trash, liquids. Think about the human factor, right? All those people probably eat lunch, drink drinks, they throw all that stuff away too. And then on top of that, the other thing is that you can never predict, because a lot of people will take their home trash and get rid of it in somebody else's trash. Yeah, I'm the CEO of trash. I'm part of big trash. Another thing that you may or may not think of when you think of dumpster diving are police, cops. It is legal where I live to dumpster dive. Trash receptacles are considered public property here. That said, before you do any of this, like first step number 1, you need to look at your local laws, and you need to double check, because state laws might say it's okay, but your city or county might actually disallow dumpster diving. But again, where I live, it's legal. So all of this is coming from a place where I'm allowed to do this, and I have been allowed to do this. I do not have advice for people who want to do it in a place where it's not allowed. I can't recommend that you do it, but all of the rest of the advice in this video still stands in those places. That said, they can still call the cops on you, regardless of whether or not it is legal. I have had the police called on me while I was digging around in a dumpster, and they have showed up. Now, when that happens, all you have to do is just be honest. Tell them what you were doing, tell them you were dumpster diving. If they tell you to put the items back, put the items back. If they let you go, then go. Be on your way. Don't make it a bigger problem than it has to be. I'm not going to teach you how to interact with cops. I think we all know by now. And I have interacted with police many times during my dumpster diving, dilly-dallying career. And really, realistically, usually when they show up, it's like the last place they want to be. If you're not causing problems, they're just going to tell you to move on, usually. So, I don't know, don't freak out if the cops get called on you. At most, they're going to ask for your ID to verify you don't have any warrants. Be normal. Really, the worst thing that could come out of it is that they could ask you to not return to the premises. They could ban you. I've never had that happen, but it is a possible thing. That's another thing that you want to remember with all of this, is that if you dumpster dive at a place that you like to go to, there is a slim chance that you could be banned from that place, right? So if they come out and they see you dumpster diving, they call the cops, they can give you a trespass order. I don't know if it's the same for every state, but at least here you can be trespassed for that. I mean, if the owners want to, it's again not really that common. There is no all-encompassing warning list for this, right? Dumpster diving is an inherently risky activity, and there is no consistent, safe way to go about it. That said, if you keep kind of the things that I've said in mind, use your common sense, and generally just be aware of what you're doing, the risk factors can mostly be mitigated. And I do think that it can be a rewarding activity. I am not trying to fearmonger dumpster diving. In fact, all I'm aiming to do with this video is to educate and potentially reduce the stigma, because I think whether it's somebody like me doing it or somebody else who maybe doesn't have the privilege that I do, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I think the best practice is that it's none of your business, right? So if you see somebody dumpster diving, let them dive. On to the part of the video where I get to talk about the less scary side of dumpster diving. I have kind of compiled a list of things that have helped me on my dumpster diving journey, and I will call them tips, like kind of tips and tricks. Again, I am not telling you to engage in a potentially unsafe activity. I need you to use your best judgment and go about this only if you feel that you can do it safely. I've got like a list of things that might be helpful here first. Gloves. And you might be like, duh. I mentioned liquids earlier. It's really unpleasant to get covered in dumpster juice. It's something you can avoid. I don't worry too much about it, but I've been doing this so long that, like, if the worst thing that happens to me is I get dumpster juice on my hands, I'm probably lucky. Box cutters or, like, other, like, a knife, like, just a sharp tool. Just because, like, sometimes things get tangled, or if you're splitting open bags, which I'll talk about later, you shouldn't really be doing that, but sometimes you do have to cut like a knot or a tie at the top of the bag. Bags. So there are different kinds of bags. Again, you're not stupid. I like to bring two main kinds of bags, though, when I go dumpster diving. IKEA bags, which you don't have to get IKEA bags, obviously, but I like IKEA bags. If you've seen them, they're like really sturdy. Anything that's going to be lightweight, right? So it's easy to carry like a bunch of them, like 3 or 4 of them. And then, like, again, sturdy. You're going to want sturdy. Something that's not going to rip. I do a lot of my dumpster diving on foot. This may vary from person to person, but regardless, you will want a receptacle for the items that you are taking out of the dumpster. The other kind of bag that I like to carry are those net produce bags. Now, again, this really depends what and where you're dumpster diving, but when I dumpster dive, a lot of times I'm looking for food items, and so those produce bags are just a really good way to carry those. The other reason that I like those produce bags is because when you're pulling things out of a dumpster, they are not always going to be clean. So when you have those produce bags, it allows any debris and dirt to fall out of the bag and not be trapped in the bag, so that by the time you get it home, your items are probably going to be a little bit cleaner and you're not going to be tracking that dirt into your home. I like to bring like rope or like shoelaces. This is kind of a weird one, but the reason that I do this is because sometimes I dumpster dive at places that have pizza. Pizza boxes are kind of strange and large, right? Now, if you're driving, obviously this isn't that big of a deal, but what I like to do when I'm carrying my pizza boxes home, and this is just a life tip in general, is tie them together and then create a loop at the top, and then you've got a handle, and then you just have all your pizza boxes all like sealed up and they won't spill and they're easier to carry. The next subject I'm going to be talking about are general rules of thumb. Now, dumpster diving obviously does not have rules. If anything, I would consider it to be like whatever the opposite of rules are, like, I don't know, cool. But I do like to adhere to some general guidelines when I'm going dumpster diving. So my biggest rule of thumb will always be to be respectful. Be respectful of your surroundings. Do not get into a dumpster, make a huge fucking mess, and then leave it for somebody else to clean up. I literally cannot stress this enough. If I see you doing that, I will put you in the dumpster. Somebody else can dive for your ass. Minimum wage workers do not want to be cleaning your dumpster mess off the ground after they already put it in the dumpster. That is insane. Do not make it a problem. That's a really good way to, 1, get a littering ticket, 2, get banned from somewhere, wherever, and 3, just to make a lot of enemies. So what I mean is just clean up after yourself. If you split a bag open, clean it up as best you can, right? And in general, I mentioned this earlier, don't be splitting bags open if you can avoid it. At the very least, if you're going to open it from the top, leave only one hole. Don't rip it open so that it spills all over and makes a huge mess. Another thing that I like to keep in mind with dumpster diving is nothing lost, nothing gained, right? So when you dumpster dive, don't go into it expecting to find $1 million or anything really, right? You didn't lose anything by opening a dumpster and looking into it. And if you feel that you did, you might want to reevaluate why you're doing this in the first place. Do not go into dumpster diving expecting that you're going to go like find a bunch of stuff you can flip and resell or find a bunch of really good food. You have to remember this is a trash can. People are throwing things away, and usually they're throwing things away for a reason, which leads me to my next point. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Now, food spoilage is kind of convoluted. I have seen plenty of perfectly good food get thrown away, and thus I am very comfortable fishing food out of trash cans and eating it. Unfortunately, that just comes with the territory of being a menace. I don't know if I can recommend it because, again, it can be unsafe. I personally have never gotten sick from doing that, and I've been doing this for so long that maybe I'm just, like, immune to the dumpster sauce, you know? But that doesn't mean you are. Food spoilage is not always visible, right? So when we think of food spoilage, a lot of times we think of mold, or maybe we think of, like, botulism, right? So, like, bloated cans or rusty cans. But oftentimes you can't necessarily see when something is bad, or even taste it, right? So if it seems too good to be true, like if you find a giant bag of something thrown out and it all looks perfectly good, it might still be bad. If an item is, let's say, in date, and I'm talking about food, like not expired and it's in the trash, there's probably another reason that it's in there, so keep in mind they could have dropped it on the floor, they could have left it sitting on a counter, or it could just not be up to par. When you're handling food from a trash can, you are gambling, and that's important to keep in mind. As much as I'd love to follow the pipe dream of, you know, waste not, want not, you know, mind your own business, a lot of people aren't capable of doing that, and I'm not going to blame them for it, because a lot of us were taught growing up that dumpster diving is weird and not appropriate. So I'm not going to expect people to change their views just for my comfort. My next little aside is going to be just be aware of where you are and what you're doing. Again, this ties into what I just said, but maybe don't go dumpster diving at the glass factory, right? Because it's probably a dumpster full of glass, and that's not safe. Don't travel to the sketchiest part of your city and go dumpster diving. That is not safe. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. Do not put yourself into jeopardy for what? You don't even know. You don't know if there's anything in there. I mean, I understand that goes both ways, but, you know, use your street smarts. Make intelligent decisions. One of my biggest pet peeves is food waste. You may have heard me say it in this video, but I'll say it again. Waste not, want not. We need to be doing a better job of utilizing what we have instead of sourcing more, right? That said, if you find a dumpster full of perfectly good items and you know you're not going to use any of it, don't take it home with you. If you know somebody who will use it and they're okay with the items being from a dumpster, that's one thing, but don't take things that you don't need. Don't utilize resources that you don't need. So I've kind of talked about like the best way to go about it. I've talked about like kind of the pros and cons. So I don't know. I don't entirely know how I want to end this video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I've gotten a ton of stuff out of dumpsters. I will say that, like, there's several furnishings in my house that are straight up from dumpsters. The first couch I ever owned was from a dumpster. I have kitchenware that was, like, out of a trash can. I have clothing that I've pulled out of dumpsters, and obviously I've eaten food out of dumpsters. I have seen a lot of things in my life, and I think in general there needs to be kind of a more positive aura around dumpster diving. Obviously, again, I am blessed enough to be doing it kind of more as a hobby, but there are people out there who genuinely, that's their livelihood, right? Like, they're getting their food or whatever else it may be from dumpsters. Regardless, I think that we need to kind of change the, like, stigma around it, I guess, right? I have told people things as simple as, like, oh, I got this table out of a dumpster, and they've been like, ugh, like, I don't want to touch that. And it's like, things can be cleaned. Just because it didn't come from a thrift shop doesn't mean that it's not secondhand, right? So, I guess, I don't know. I think dumpster diving is really cool. I think that maybe it wouldn't be as big of a thing if we didn't throw out so much stuff. But again, who am I to talk? Some of the best things I've ever owned have come from a dumpster. So, I don't know. If you think you can, maybe try dumpster diving. Go drink some dumpster juice. This wasn't obvious to me for the longest time, but people think it's kind of weird when you dig through trash cans. I'm gonna have to sit on that one for a bit. I don't know why.